In the quiet moments spent with hands in the earth, there's something deeply transformative that happens. It's more than just the act of gardening and growing itself and getting that connection to the earth. It's a journey of growth. Growing your own food brings not only you get to see something outside of yourself growing, but you also get to nurture something out of yourself. And somehow doing that, I believe here at Red Ridge Farm, that growing and gardening can help you find a path to discovering one's identity, discovering who God made you and the purpose that He has for you here on earth. And somehow connecting deeply with the cycles of nature helps us do that, and ultimately growing closer to God. So today in this episode, I want to talk about how we can look at the different parts and purposes God has given us and how we can really envelop those and bring them closer to ourselves and almost intertwine them with our identity. Let's get growing. Hello, and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast, the show that talks about growing a garden, a homestead, a healthy family, and most importantly, growing closer to God. I'm your host, Crystal Media, owner of the Red Ridge Farm Homestead, where our mission is to help women of faith find the courage to grow healthy food for their family while building a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior. If that's you, don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant. Hello, fellow growers, and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast. This episode is season 14, episode 5, and we're going to go a little deep today in talking about God, but also talking about growing and our purposeful journey. I've discussed here on the podcast how I have looked at the purpose of growing, the purpose of my life, the purpose of how God sees me. And I use those purposes to come up with to-do lists, with projects, with ideas, because they're who God made me. So why would I not want to grow in those areas? And all of us have these parts of us, but when we go in deeper into growing our own food, we have to really learn to not only categorize ourselves, but how to really focus on the things that we need to do, because we're doing a lot. And in that connection, in that resting on God and growing our own food, because that's something that's completely out of our control, isn't it? I mean, we can plant the seed, but we can't make the seed grow. I started seedlings just the other day, and I'm sitting there staring. Hopefully I'm watering them enough, hoping that they sprout and grow, but I can't make them grow. And that means when we're on our purposeful journey, there's a lot of things that we have to rely on that are outside of ourselves, especially God. And I don't see how when you're growing your own food, how you cannot connect with God in so many different ways. Another instance is my goats are about to kid. I don't know when they're going to kid. I can hope that it's on the date that I estimate that it's going to happen, but I don't know there's actually specific gestation, even when we have our own kids. I had a due date, but none of my kids landed on their due dates. So we're always just waiting in this anticipation, because as growers, we have a lot of things that are out of our control. But it's funny how those things that are out of our control can really put perspective on ourselves and put perspective on the things that God does give us control of. I've discussed here on the podcast and on the blog about people asking me, well, how do you get all these things done? Or how do you make sure that every part of you is fulfilled? Or how do you make sure that you're doing the housework as well as the growing? And how do you make sure you do all of these things? Well, the biggest way I do that, and I mean, this is not something that I taught myself. I've been taking a lot of classes from, and I've told you guys, from Simply Convivial. We read her book a little while ago about homemaking and really connecting with it's Misty Winkler, really connecting with how God made you a homemaker. If He gave you a home, He made you a homemaker. Now, does everybody's homemaking skills or how they run their home the same? No, it isn't. But it's important to focus on it and nurture it and build in it and grow in it, because it's who God made you. And she talks about a little bit more about that too, like finding your vocations. And I think that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today too, is like finding your vocations in your growing journey. I've shared with you mine, but I think finding your vocations go so much deeper into really understanding who God made you so that you can act and take action in certain ways. I know in the Faith in Action Bible study that we've been doing here on the podcast, we just finished it up last week or a couple weeks ago. We talk about taking action, and we're taking action on our faith journey. Well, here we talk about the purposeful journey where we are trying to grow our own food and create purpose. Well, how can we create our own purpose? I don't think we can. I think we create purpose through God and through the purposes and things that He has for us to do. So today I just want to touch on a few of those ideas and really open up that world for you so that you can embrace who God made you, as well as take charge of your growing journey, because you are taking charge of the things that one need done, but that God has made you to do. So I think the first place that we can start when we're designing and figuring out our identity and really looking at how we can find purpose is to look at the purposeful growing journey that I have developed. I think that's an easy way to look at the different pieces and really piece together, one, that growing your own food is a journey and it can go in stages. It doesn't have to. It's helpful. I know when I looked at my growing journey that of 20 plus years, I wish I would have had a path. I wish I would have had something that kind of pointed me in a direction. I wish I could have just looked right into, and in my life, I wish I could just look right into God's book of life and say, oh, this is what's going to happen next, and this is going to happen next. Wouldn't that be nice? But when I sat down and really looked at my journey and other people's growing journey, I did see a path that made sense, especially when I brought in the permaculture principle of relativity, of like, deal with what you have right in front of you and then move out in sustainable circles. And also the journey that I kind of developed also talks about growing from the simple thing that you could start doing to the extravagant, all the knowledge that you could get to when you have a full homestead. I think the biggest principle that a lot of people do when they want to get into growing or start a farm or start really anything, they think that they need to be at the end first, but it's not. We need to build up to that. And the same goes with how God has laid out your plan. So we're going to talk about vocations here in a little bit, but I think the purposeful journey can really show you that finding that path, finding that angle to a growing journey can really help identify who you are, because if you go through these stages, you're going to see, oh, I flourish in this area and maybe I don't really like this so much. Maybe I won't go there or I won't grow that. I think that's what school should be so much. Of course, you guys know I homeschool my kids, but I really think that's what school is. My kids talk to me all the time. They're like, why do we have to learn algebra? I hate algebra. I don't understand it. Well, the world asks us to learn algebra, but maybe if you never tried out algebra and you just looked at it as this thing that, that's everybody hates it and I don't want to do it because everybody else hates it, you might find that you love it. And that's the path that God is trying to push you towards, because it's something that He has developed a gift in you. But if you never try something or understand something or even just read a book about something, you may not feel that connection to it and feel a little disconnected. Also, when we talk about vocations, we're going to be talking about the things that God has put in your life that make you who you are by giving you charge of them. So when I developed the purposeful growing journey, I wanted a way that someone could, if they were brand new, one, not get overwhelmed, two, feel that they were moving forward every single day, and three, had a path so that they didn't feel like they were left behind or were moving too slow, but also four, that they could do right now, that you didn't need all these big shiny things to start growing your own food or to start incorporating the practices that would change how you present food to your family. And the first stage of the Purposeful Growing journey, and I will put a link to the Purposeful Growing website page where I've broke down all of these stages for you. I've given you tips on how you know what stage you're in, what things you should be working on in each of those stages, and how to develop into the next stages. I'll put that link in the description below. But the first stage is the Just Grow stage. And in that Just Grow stage, I teach you, and you guys probably know this here, on the podcast that in those episodes and things that I talk about the Just Grow stage, I'm teaching you how to set goals. I'm teaching you how to make relative goals. I'm teaching you how to create goals and change them into habits. I'm showing you how you can develop a plan to get started. The next stage is the purposeful kitchen stage. I feel that this is the next stage because everyone has a kitchen. Everything about growing your own food is centered around a kitchen. And when you get out growing your own food, you're going to bring that food where? Back into your kitchen. So why not learn the skills of a purposeful kitchen first, especially if you're just starting out. Now, if you've been growing for a while, this is a great place to go back into and dive into, especially when you're wanting to learn how to preserve your harvest or how to make a meal plan or how to really just dive into the kitchen and learn how to cook from scratch quickly and all of those ideas. That's what I share with you here on the podcast. And it's just logical because you can start in this area without growing your own food and change your mindset, especially in this area, about maybe going to farmers markets and buying your food there. And when you go there, you're, of course, are going to start buying in bulk. And then you're going to learn how to preserve your own food. You could be doing all of these things without growing a garden. The next stage of the purposeful growing journey is the home. And logically, I thought, you know what, we really need to jump right onto the garden. That's growing your own food. But then that came back to Vocations for me and that I am a homemaker. And it's true that a homemaker is part of your growing journey. If you are trying to change up the way you create food for your family, then that extends to every part of how you want to take care and protect your family. So a homemaker is going to be the one, providing maybe different cleaning supplies that are a little more healthier for your family, because maybe that's why you're growing your own food, is because you want better health. But homemaking also is about getting all this stuff done and creating a budget and finding out how you can find the financial support that you need to grow your own food, or how you can get the financial support to eventually buy land or to make some of your dreams come true. Growing your own food does cost money, and the education that you would need to grow your own food, that costs money as well. All of that can be useful when you create a budget. It also comes down to, if you feel that you have your home taken care of and that your family is taken care of, it's easier to add more. Right? It's easier to add more things to your to-do list because you know you have the systems you need to make things happen in your home. And that's what I talk about in the Purposeful Home stage. We talk about cleaning systems and organization systems, and we talk about systems that we can develop in our home. And it can be even a mindset that we develop in ourselves so that we can fulfill those. And if you really think about it, these growing stages are part of who you are. Every person needs to make goals. That's who you are. Every person cooks in their kitchen. Every person cleans and has a home. And those are the things that you need to develop and you could really connect to. And we're going to talk about that more in just a minute. But the next stage of the purposeful growing journey is now when we get outside. Right? Next is the garden. So you've gotten things learned, and you can do these stages intertwined. You don't have to do them in specific order. If you're brand new, I suggest that you do. You get out into the garden. Well, here I teach you about incorporating, yes, growing a garden, but also incorporating permaculture into your garden so that you can grow more and be more abundant, even in a small space. Because a garden doesn't have to be this big, huge garden. A garden could be a few jars of herbs on your kitchen counter. A garden can be anything that you're growing to help better your food, especially your fruits and vegetables. A garden could be a community garden where you're going to and with others to grow food together. A garden doesn't just have to be you growing it. I like to teach you more than just this is how you plant such and such, but more about the permaculture principles behind gardening that could help you. Also, soil health. Our soil is our foundation of growing, and it's our foundation not only in the garden, but in the next stage, which is the purposeful homestead stage. Permaculture is also very useful in the homestead stage as well. But homestead stage to me is now you're ready to add animals. It could be simple animals like some chickens or some rabbits, or it can be dairy goats and all of the extravagance. But in that stage, I try to teach you how to grow animals, maybe how to choose your first animal. What are the things that you need before you choose your first animal? Or what are some things that you can develop on your homestead, like rotational grazing or other permaculture principles to help you design your homestead. Where should you put your garden? Where should you put your orchard? Where should you put your home if you have barren land? Where would you want to center these things around? And the last stage is the purposeful life. And in the purposeful life, this is when you're bringing all the stages together to create a life, growing your own food, taking care of your family, being a little bit of a rebel, maybe not totally self-sufficient. You know, and I know that I've talked to you about being self-sufficient. It's impossible and it's not something that we should be looking forward to, but being sufficient in a way that we're not dependent on the things that everybody else is dependent. Also in that stage, I teach you about making money on your homestead. Maybe you want to do a market garden, or you want to grow just a few extra vegetables to sell, or you're thinking about getting goats and you think about dairy goats, but you want to do just a little bit more and actually sell the milk. That's something else that's also in the purposeful growing stage. So I hope you see how the purposeful growing journey really takes you through, the different stages, but it also shows you the different parts of growing your own food. Growing your own food isn't just growing food. There's so many parts to it. Yes, okay, you go out, you plant your carrots, you harvest your carrots. Now what? If you don't have the skills to preserve those carrots, then you're going to be eating carrots like crazy and turn a little orange before they go bad. So you need to be doing these other ideas to help you grow. And on that path, on that journey, you can see and test out so many different things that you begin to connect with who God made you. You get to connect because everything is so fundamental. Everything is so simple that you get to be able to say, wow, I really love kneading bread. This is something I never realized about myself, but I love kneading bread when it's so warm in your hands, and just the mechanical action of it is calming to me. I can do it and my hands are warm, and I think about other things, and it's just a little bit of time for me. That's the one big thing that I love about my dairy goats is I love that peace and quiet that I get in the barn. There's nothing like sitting there quietly and all you hear is a swish, 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 swish. You hear the other animals around you eating, and it's time that I can spend with God. And the same in the garden. There's different times in each pieces. I used to hate weeding, but weeding is a part of growing, and it's a part that's necessary. So I've tried to change it into time that I have with God, and that has helped me change and find that purpose inside of just doing the regular things. So I don't want to make this episode too long, but let's get into vocations. So when we are on our growing journey, we find, especially when we've gotten all the way to the purposeful life, that there's a lot of things to do. And sometimes we feel pulled apart by all the things that we need to do. And one of the things that Misty Winkler really talks about, and I found this so eye-opening for me, is that we need to embrace instead of run away from, because you know how I hate housework. Instead of run away from something, we should embrace how God makes us and that it is a necessity to do housework. Because the other side of my hate of housework was that I also felt bad that my house wasn't as clean as I would like it to be. I also felt discouraged when I didn't have the clothes clean for the kids and we were going to something special and I just forgot to do it. Or I felt discouraged about inviting people over to my home because it just wasn't as clean as I thought it would be. And so then I felt discouraged there. And these other things, it's like, it took me a moment to figure out, okay, well, God gave me a home, yet I hate that part of who God made me, but God made me that way. So in a way, I'm hating who I am. am. And then therefore, why aren't I doing the things that God made me? And it was just this constant circle. And in a way, I felt depressed. I felt bad about myself. I felt like these are things that I know I can do. Cleaning your house isn't hard, but taking the time to do dishes, taking the time to schedule all these things. I love scheduling. I have so many different cleaning and house scheduling things that's not even funny. But Misty Winkler really broke it down to me as in just make it simple. Take the time to nurture this part of who God made you. Take the time to learn about homemaking. Take the time to learn about what is causing these feelings of depression and sadness that you're having, and find out what's going on there. And when I found out, well, guess what? God made me a homemaker, and so why am I trying to deny who God made me? Maybe I don't enjoy this as much as I could. And I think that's more in the past. I really do maybe not enjoy it, but I get it done, and I do it with an open and grateful heart for having a home, for having a family, for having these things. And it has changed. That mindset has changed. So one of the big practices that she had us do, and yeah, her book was about homemaking, and yeah, she was like, oh, we, focus on this. But she said, no, that's not all that God has made you. God has made you more than just a homemaker. And we need to not, one, look down on this job that God has given us. That's another thing that I was doing, was looking down at that job. But we also need to see the other parts of us that if we have our homemaking figured out, that we get to go do, or we get to develop. Because if we're going to develop homemaking skills, why not develop these other skills? And I think the Purposeful Growing Journey, or the growing your own food, really helps you do that, and really focusing and finding who you are. So she said for me to write down the 5 things that I would say that really identify myself. You know what? Being a grower of my own food, I couldn't limit myself to 5. It was really hard to get down to 5. I think I have it to 6. I'm a Christian, and that changes how I look on life completely, because when I look at nature and the snowstorm, and when I look at the plants growing and the earth needing to be covered up, or weeds will grow, I don't look at it as Mother Nature. I look at it as, no, that is God's system. That is how He designed it. That is who He is and what He does. And when I connect to those systems, then I can grow better. And so that's a whole different mindset when it comes to my growing my own food. And that different mindset is also how I connect to who I am and how I figure things out. The next thing that I thought was my next vocation was God made me a wife and mother, and I need to work on and build those relationships with my husband and my kid. And I need to be able to, spend time with them. And it needs to be something that I put on my schedule or put on my to-do list to have a date with my husband. It needs to be where I have conversations with him, or I make time for him, because we are one. It's an important role that God has given me as a wife, and especially a mother. I call it my family vocation, because I'm a wife, I'm a mother, but I'm also a daughter. I try to develop and keep those relationships growing as well, and spending time with my parents and spending time with my sisters and being available and helpful in those areas, because God made those connections, and they're not something that I should just throw out the window. God wants us to be connected with our fellow people, and those connections are important to me. And so I felt that, that my next vocation is a family, because I have so many other things to add. So the next vocation, and I'm looking in my journal, because I have separated. That's how I plan my to-do list, is by my vocations. But the other one is a homemaker. And this is something that I've had to face and look in the mirror and say, yes, Crystal, you are a homemaker. God has given you a home. He's given you people to take care of. He has given you a place to take care of them in. So flourish in that area. Do what you need to do so you can flourish. Is it to change your mindset? Whatever it is. I don't want to get stuck on that area. That's where I struggle, but that helped me see that I struggle there and connect to, okay, that is who God made me. That is who I am. So that is some place that I need to work on and change my mindset and change my feelings towards that area, because it's still something that God has given me purpose to do. And in that, as a homemaker, especially God's purpose to do, it's me having the right attitude in that area so my kids see God through me. I mean, that's one of the greatest things that God has given us. It's like our charge, right? Is to go out and tell the world about God. And having a grudgery about doing the dishes, that's what my kids see. And I didn't want them to see that anymore. I wanted them to see my first vocation inside, being a Christian, inside my homemaking. And that's what really has opened my eyes up there. The next vocation that I have is a grower. I'm a grower. That includes all the growing areas. That was my easiest way that I could put all the purposeful growing stages into one vocation. That means that area has a lot and it does get a lot of attention, but I wanted to make sure that the other areas got attention as well. I wanted to make it only a single thing so that the other things, like being a Christian, a wife, a family, a homemaker, was of equal value, because growing your own food could take over your life, and you guys know this. And I think that's where sometimes we find an identity in it so easily, because it's like it just takes over your life. I mean, today on my to-do list, I need to set up the incubator. I need to start my seedlings, my beets and lettuce, and those things need to get done. But I also have on my list of all the other stuff that I need to do. But if I were to just, and I could easily, because that's just something that growing is one of the big things that I feel passionate about, and I can let it overrun my life. But if we want an equal and balanced identity and balance in who God made us and who our path, we need to be doing all these other kind of juggling all these other things. But and I guess it's wearing different hats. But when you put them in vocations, it helps you balance them because each of them has the same weight. And the last vocation that I have is educator. And that's me coming to you. This is something that God has asked me to do, even though I don't understand it, even though He has asked me to reach out to others and teach them how to grow their own food, and especially show them Him, God. I never thought this was possible. I never thought that this would be something that I do. Yes, as a high school kid, I thought, oh yeah, I'll be a teacher. But then I hit college, and going through all the teacher classes, I had extreme anxiety with speaking in front of people. I had panic attacks. I had all of those things. But God has slowly molded and changed my life to be one of a teacher. I mean, He knew that I was going to be, and He has changed it and molded it and shown me that there's different ways. Like sitting here in front of a microphone, I can still be a teacher and still develop people and still show people God and show people how to grow their own food. Also teaching a Bible study with maybe a little bit smaller groups of people, and teaching a Bible study here with you has really shown me that yes, I am an educator, and that is part of who God made me. So those are my 6 vocations. Yeah, I was right. I got it to 6. Now, inside those, there's probably tons of different hats. Like grower is a gardener, a homesteader, and a rancher, all those things. And an educator is, talking to you here on the podcast, developing Bible studies, writing a book, all those things are part of that. So I just wanted to take some time today to show you that when you dive in and really connect to nature and really connect in your growing journey and find a path inside of it, you're going to be planting seeds. You're going to be planting seeds of finding out who you are. And through your journey and through your experiences, you're going to see that when you don't have control of things, like planting the seed, you do have control of, but you don't have control of how tall that's going to grow. You don't have control of if the potato beetles are going to come, and you don't have control of the mold or blight that your tomatoes might get, but you do have control over who God made you. It changes your perspective. It changes how you will view the world, and essentially it helps you find your identity in God. It helps you find and see who God has made you and how you can truly develop and become the person God made you. So I want to thank you for joining me today here in this episode of the Pray Just Plant podcast. My name's Crystal Mediate, your host. If you're new here, welcome to the Red Ridge Farm Fellowship of Fellow Growers. And as always, don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant. This week's episode is brought to you by the Planning Beyond the Harvest Handbook. This handbook was designed to help you get your harvest onto your family's plates. We grow all this delicious food, and sometimes in the garden planning, we forget about the harvest and beyond the harvest. This workbook will walk you through the 5 steps that I use to get beyond the harvest. You can grab your copy at redridgefarm.org/resources.